Hello, it's Paul Driscoll here, aka the Drisk, and I thought it'd be good in celebrating the wonderful 40-year anniversary of the Amiga. Thought I'd go through one of my favourite magazines as a series and just go through each in depth. Yeah, I had to choose Amiga Power. I mean, this came at a special time. I'd not long had my Amiga, and it was all so fresh and exciting. And then, of course, you got in the May issue of Amiga Format that I bought this wonderful sort of free book that was advertising this new sister magazine that was going to be more focused on the games, which at the time as a kid, a teenager, I was more interested in the games than, all these applications and things that Amiga Format tended to cover as well. So I thought, without further ado, let's have a look at that first issue of issue 0. And this was great. It came with their first top 100 list that they would do every subsequent year for the entire life cycle of the Amiga Power. Because Amiga Power went right from sort of this is May 1992. And they went right the way through to basically the death knell of the Amiga. And, it was 65 issues ultimately, not including this, 66 if you include these, as issue 0. But yeah, really, really interesting. And hopefully, I think it would be a great way if people enjoy this series of, discovering some of these games and giving the flow of when these games were released, because already at this time, the Amiga was well regarded and loved. I mean, Speedball 2 had come out and many of the classics, Lemmings and things. So it really was already at its heyday, exciting times. So, of course, first thing is just giving an idea of what it's all going to cover, the focus being the top 100. And they mentioned in issue 1, they're going to give Bomboozle a complete game, which was a big deal because you didn't really get complete games at this point given on cover discs. There was sort of a gentleman's agreement to not give full games because it was seen as one of the factors of killing the Spectrum. It got silly on the Spectrum and C64. Every cover disc had about 7 games. So a bit like today, it became oversaturated with all the sales and things. So you just don't, why buy, the full price games? Right. Okay. So let's have a look at number 1. Now, it's interestingly on this top 100, unlike the others, they don't do it as a countdown. So you start right at number 1, the best. And after much deliberation, they chose Rainbow Islands. Yeah, I mean, this is undeniably a wonderful coin-op conversion, and it is a great Taito classic, so already has that. But this really was groundbreaking, sort of like seeing such an arcade perfect version of the classic. Now, of course, as probably most people know, this is a sequel to Bubble Bobble, and you're playing Bub and Bob in their human forms. They've been turned from their dinosaur bubble-blowing prowess of the first game. And, Braben, who did the port of this, just captures everything. It is such a wonderful, accurate port, and the Amiga palette really elevates it. I can certainly see why it's number 1 at this time. Wouldn't be my number 1, but certainly would be in the top 5. Number 2 is Lemmings. Now, of course, this was a wonderful idea, and you control like a hapless band of lemmings, hundreds of the little blighters, and you have to help them negotiate through all the traps and dangers by giving certain lemmings skills to make their way through to the exit. It's a great little puzzle game. They call it puzzle game meets Populous, so it's a bit like a God Sim, but yeah, I can sort of see where they're coming from, but it is really a puzzle game at its heart and a really addictive one. I love the chip music. I love the gameplay. Awesome. Then at number 3, I adore this game, of course, is Speedball 2 Brutal Deluxe. And this is a futuristic sports game. Took everything that was great about the original Speedball game and just took it to a factor of 11. Of course, done by the Bitmap brothers, who I think the best developer on the Amiga. And, they just did such a classic, fun game. I can certainly see why Speedball 2's here. I know Kingy's not a fan of Speedball 2, but mostly because I don't think he's very good at it. And if you have a like-minded, skilled player playing this in 2-player is just simply awesome. Okay, then we come to number 4, and it is Sim City. This was so revolutionary at its time. It has you build a city and try and make the inhabitants of that city as happy as possible whilst keeping all the books balanced. Something that a lot of councils have struggled to do in the UK and could probably do with playing this game to try and learn how to run a city. But enough politics. This is undeniably it's an interesting game, and yeah, I mean, I've spent hundreds of hours as a teenager playing my way through this and, building up the perfect city. Really, really engaging. I just wish I had the time to play these sort of games. Then a real surprise one at number 5, and that is Virus. This was, I believe, done by David Braben and of Elite fame, and it's a sort of like a 3D polygon shooter. It takes elements of Defender. You you have to work your way around the environment, defending and shooting all the enemies. And it's a great, interesting game. Wouldn't even make my top 100, but here it is at number 5. And then we have at number 6, of course, this is a true groundbreaking classic by Peter Molyneux and Bullfrog fame, and it is Populous. It is what put them on the map. And, this was the first. You can argue there's earlier ones, but this was the first one that set the mold for being the God sim. You control not directly the people and inhabitants, but you can sort of like rise and fall the landscape and sort of take your little characters and sort of like make it as habitable for them as possible, protect them. Or you can be nasty, spiteful God and rain down a whole things such as sort of like earthquakes and volcanoes upon the poor creatures just to have a bit of fun. Yeah, it is an engaging game. I did love this back in the day. It's one, if I'm honest, I struggle to go back to today, but certainly at the time, it was awesome. Then at number 7, they've chosen Kickoff 2. This, up until Sensible Soccer came out, which hadn't come out yet at this time, Kickoff 2 was the peak of football games. It was truly, truly stunning. Dino Dini had done the Kickoff games, and the overhead viewpoint, the football having sort of like follow on, so it felt realistic. The football physics just made it really, really fun and engaging. Being able to curl the ball into the goal. I mean, really, Sensible Soccer took so much from this game, although, they would counter that Dino Dini took a lot from their first game, which was Microprose Soccer. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to get into all of that, but all I know is Kickoff 2 was a phenomenal game. It was one that I had bundled with my Amiga and held a special place in my heart. Now, at number 8 is Falcon. Yeah, I struggle with a lot of flight sim games, but yeah, Falcon was one that they chose. very, very technical. I guess it's technical improvements, but yeah, it's very difficult to go back to. It is not as easy as things like F-29 Retaliator or F-19 Stealth that were out at this time. And, I've always tended to prefer more the arcadey side of things, or more your World War One, like Knights of the Skies that came later, which I find more engaging than sort of like shooting a blip with a missile like hundreds of miles away. Then at number 9, we have Indianapolis 500. Yes, this is, until Jeff Crammon came along, this was the de facto 3D racer, really ahead of its time. We did include it in the evolution of racing games for that very reason. Of course, it's more the Daytona tracks, so expect like ovals, a little bit boring, but it really captured what it felt like to be a racer, and so much better than the terrible Days of Thunder license that came out that was also based on Daytona. I wish they just took this and tweaked it for the film. Yeah. Now, one thing I do disagree at number 10 is Stunt Car Racing. I disagree because this should be, I think, much higher at the list, but I'm glad to see it here. Of course, this is Jeff Crammon's fun classic where you're on these sort of roller coaster tracks, you're making your way through, you can literally fall off at any point, doing these stunts, racing against other drivers. And of course you could do the link up cable to actually play a human player if you've got 2 Amigas, 2 TVs and like a null modem cable. Yeah, I really, really love this, and for me it would be higher up the list, but great to see it in the top 10. Then at number 11 we have Pang. This I totally get. It set the standards for arcade conversions. It truly is. They describe it as genuinely flawless, and I totally get that. It really does feel pretty arcade perfect, really. And they complain there's a slightly squiffy collision detection, which makes it go slightly down the list. I don't know about that. I think they were just choosing their sort of preferences, but I think everybody knows Pang. But essentially it's Space Invaders meets asteroids. You have to clear the killer bubbles bouncing down as you make your way through the entire world, location by location. Every time you shoot a bubble, it splits into 2. This is the asteroid bit, and they get smaller and smaller until you clear them down. Great game, great 2-player game as well, although this was the game that I fell out with a mate for a good couple of weeks, and we were never quite the same after, and we fell out over this game, as crazy as it sounds, because we couldn't progress on even with infinite lives, because I say that he kept on dying, and he says that he was trying his best. Yeah, which he was. It's silly when you're kids, but yeah, we got quite huffy because we were so keen to complete it. But that's the love of this game. We did make it though. Right, and then you have number 12 and Prince of Persia. Now this is one that I sort of lament that we didn't make our own top 50 list, but because it is a wonderful port, of course, with the rotoscope animation and truly epic gameplay as you make your way through. I still think it's the best version. I think it just feels right on the Amiga, whether some of the console 16-bit ports just don't feel right. Okay, then we have a weird one at number 13. We have Spin Dizzy Worlds. This is a Marble Madness lookalike. It was really popular on the 8-bits. And the 16-bit sort of obviously ups the colours and things like that. It is simple to play, it's enjoyable. I wouldn't make my top 100 list, but here it is here, and I can, that's what they've chose. Likewise, number 14, we have Nebulous. This visually was very, very impressive. Essentially, it's sort of a game like Jumping Jack and other ancient platform games, but Nebulous sort of took it around a tower with a wonderful twisting effect. It looks fantastic. The 16-bit visuals are bright and colourful, and it is a really addictive game. I mean, one that I find more frustrating than enjoyable, hence why it personally wouldn't make my list. But they've chosen it at number 14. Then we have Carrier Command. This is part flight sim, part strategy game, as they described. And, this was truly impressive, both on the 16 bits and particularly probably on the 8 bits. It's a really old game that came out in 1987 on the Amiga. And it was amazing. You basically control like a carrier command ship, and you essentially have to sort of take out all the enemies. You've got tanks and you've got planes and helicopters. It really is very, very addictive. It's sort of, they describe it also as part battle zone. Yeah, I can sort of see that. It sort of takes the idea. I mean, undeniably it's a great game, but it's one that I always struggled a little bit as a kid because it was a lot to learn to master, and but I totally understand why it's such a classic. Likewise, at number 16, Dungeon Master. Now this I adored. It came way back in 1986. It was sort of devised, and taking ideas. So, number 16 is Dungeon Master. And, they sort of took ideas of wizardry and the old sort of like dungeon crawlers, but gave it wonderful 3D maze for you to go through. And there was treasures and traps, and it played awesome. It really gave that wonderful feeling of being a band of sort of fantasy warriors working your way through Dungeon Master. And I loved things like Hero Quest at this time, and I was quite interested with sort of like Dungeons and Dragons and things like that, just the idea of it all, and Warhammer. And this was just a great way of sort of firing up my mind. I still love going back to Dungeon Master to this day, and any of the dungeon crawlers, but it's just having the time these days, sadly. Then at number 17, we have Rick Dangerous 2. And of course done by Simon Phipps. And I'm glad to see they've chosen Rick Dangerous 2 over Rick Dangerous, because a lot of people say Rick Dangerous 1 is the better game. I think it's better balanced with Rick Dangerous 2. There's less like insta deaths. There are still there, of course, that's one of the facets of it. But of course you play Rick Dangerous, and unlike the first one when he was basically Indiana Jones, in this one you're essentially Flash Gordon or Superman type thing, and you're working your way through saving the world once more. It's set in a futuristic settings, and just really addictive gameplay, and working your way through lots of different levels. Simon Phipps, I love his games, and this one he knocked it out the park again. Then at number 18 we have Ultima 5, and this is a really good RPG. It's one that doesn't get talked about as much as it used to. I mean, it used to be Ultima was the gold standard series for RPGs, and I feel it's sort of lost that mantle over time. People don't talk about the Ultima games, but it is a great game. Yes, it's overhead. Yes, the graphics look a bit naff, but gameplay wise, it really made you feel you were entering another world. It was truly engaging. And then at 19 we have another arcade port, the New Zealand Story. Yes, it is a wonderful home port again, another Taito classic. I probably don't like the Taito game as much as I do some of their other cute platformers, but you play a Kiwi and you have a little bow and arrow. Enough said, really. This is a lot of fun. Okay, at number 20 we have The Sentinel. Yeah, this is the one where It's a 3D landscape. You've got to like rotate and absorb the trees. Kingy has tried patiently to try and get me to learn and understand this game. I sort of can do enough to play it. I personally get a little bit bored with it, but I do see its wonder, and I think if you're a smart person, unlike me, you'd find a lot to love here. Then number 21, we have Damocles, which is the name for Mercenary 2, and Paul Wokes, who did the series, he really ups the ante in so many ways. It's got wonderful solid 3D graphics and just that go anywhere experience. It really was a lot of fun, and I think in many ways was the pinnacle really of the series. Just it probably was more impressive on the 8-bits, but seeing it in color on the 16 bits, it's a true classic, just one that you have to spend some time with. Then at number 22, we have Paradroid 90. This is another Hewson game, and it's another Braybook, Andrew Braybook, and it's a shooter really, so it's an interesting one. I mean, Paradroid 90 sort of updates the shooting experience, and you got all the rogue droids and stuff. It's one that, yeah, I enjoy. It's interesting to see it here. Wouldn't make my top 100, but it is undeniably a polished shooter. Then at number 23, we have Plotting. This is a bit like Puzznic, but it's, as they say, more accessible, and you basically sort of zap to join the objects together. It's a great puzzle game as you make your way through, and it's an accurate conversion of the coin up, of course, of what it's based. Then at number 24, and this is an interesting choice, and it is Typhoon Thompson. Yeah, I mean, they asked themselves, why is it here, as it's got in the top 100, because it's got extremely repetitive gameplay, only 5 levels, graphics that consist largely of blue, the seascape, and can only be described as minimalist and not exactly action-packed. But the reason that they say it has to be here is because it's fun. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. I mean, it is fun, but yeah, it wouldn't make my list. But this is one of the things I do like, is there's some real curveballs to their top 100 lists, and that's all the better for it. One that definitely deserves to be here, though, is number 25. We're already a quarter of the way through, and it is Laser Squad, of course done by Julian Gollop, who went on to do all the UFO games and Phoenix Point most recently. And this is a great... while he done things like Rebel Star and things like that and Chaos, this one was the one that I first really got to know the name Julian Gollop. And it's turn-based, take a squad of Marines, work your way through the mission. It's just a really engaging. I've always loved sort of turn-based strategy games, and I kind of wish there were more games like Laser Squad. I feel some of his later games, they over complex, make it too much factors to everything, and sometimes you just want that overhead, simple, can see what's going on and work your way through. Yeah, real classic. Very, very happy to see it here. Okay, then we go on to number 26, and surprised again to see this here, but it is Clax, of course, based on that arcade puzzle game. This is like a stacking up in colours, think sort of Connect 4 meets Tetris, really. The shapes come down a conveyor belt, and you have to like clack them on to make 3 in a row, either diagonally or any direction, and make sure you don't reach the top. It's a competent, fun, and pretty flawless conversion of the arcade game. I just don't know if there's enough there for me personally to put it in the top 100, but happy to see it here. Okay, then number 27, this is a real classic to me, is Swiv. This was an unofficial sequel to Silkworm. Some would argue it's Silkworm in vertical. That's what SWIV stands for. They've never confirmed or denied, but essentially you play a helicopter or a jeep and you make your way through, and there were so many nice touches to this. I loved, when seeing the tracks on the ground and things like that. Of course, nobody ever wanted to play the jeep, but it was and is a great shooter, one of the best on the Amiga, so happy to see it here. Then at number 28, they have chosen Indy Jones Adventure. Not quite the name, but I guess they couldn't squeeze it in. It's essentially Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade is what the game they are choosing. And it was the LucasArts adventure game before, they'd cut their teeth on some of the more famous ones like Secret of Monkey Island and things like that. And, this was before all of this. And awesome game. It follows the film pretty closely and has some great puzzles and ways forward. And great film license. Okay, you have at number 29, F-19 Stealth Fighter. Surprising that this is lower down the list than Falcon, but it's an interesting. Well, it's just a more accessible flight sim. They were great. I mean, I know people absolutely adore them. Yeah, it was one that I did play a little bit, but I've always preferred, as I mentioned, the more sort of like close dogfighting rather than sort of shooting from long distance and modern planes. So let's move on to number 30, and we have another puzzle game that doesn't really get talked about these days, and it is E-Motion. And this was great, really. This is just a load of old balls, and this is using sort of like, kinetics, and you essentially have to match up the same colours of the balls to make them disappear. And the idea is in the minimum amount of moves to make all the balls disappear. And it is surprisingly chill and fun. I do enjoy it, and great to see it here at number 30. Then you got a trailer advert for the upcoming game Toki. Now, of course, the advert for Toki, I'm so glad to see it here. This was an amazing port of the arcade gem, and as you can see in the gameplay here, it is truly stunning. Then on the other side, you have Powermonger. So this would be the about to be released, and this was another sort of like taking it on from sort of Populous. I felt it made it a little bit more complex, perhaps for me. I didn't get into it as much, but undeniably a great game. Then at number 31, we have an Anthony Crowther game, Captive. It's sort of, it's Dungeon Master meets Cyberpunk, as they call it out here. And that's a good way of describing it. I mean, I've always been more interested in the futuristic setting than the fantasy setting. So I really got into this game, and just making your way around and through. It's just, if you got time, this sort of game is truly wonderful. So then you have Powermonger at 32, and this basically took the idea of Populous, but done by the same team, of course, Peter Bonlieu and the Bullfrog team. And this made it more of a sort of general rather than a god. It visually really takes everything to another level. I never liked it as much, but it has to be high on the list if you love those sort of games. Then at number 33, we have Xenon 2. Of course, this is probably more famous for the title track, which had Bomb the Bass, Assault on Precinct 13 as the theme tune, and sounded and still is absolutely stunning. I mean, I used to leave it on loop just to listen to the soundtrack. The gameplay, on reflection, isn't as good. It does have the polished, beautiful graphics of the Bitmap Brothers. It's a little less polished in the gameplay department. But yeah, I mean, it's certainly an Amiga classic, so well beloved and good to see here. Then we have at number 34, we have Puzznic. This is another puzzle game, and yeah, sure, it might not look the greatest graphically, but it's another one of those sort of like get the two shapes together and make them disappear. It's another one of those, and yeah, a lot of fun. I love the music, title music as well. Then number 35, we have Super Off-Road Racer. This is another state-of-the-art coin-op conversion, and this time it's sort of taking racing around dirt tracks in sort of like trucks, and that just plays awesomely well. You know, it's working your way through. I mean, I love playing this in the arcade, but most of that love comes from playing it at home. Works even better with a multiplayer. I'd probably say the SNES version with a multi-tap is the best way to play this in the home, or of course like on MAME, of course, if you've got the arcade versions. Yeah, but a lot of fun. Then we have another flight sim, F-29 Retaliator. Yes, this takes it again forward and has more things. You know, it's another flight sim. I mean, I don't really get into all of these, but undeniably it's well and polished, and if you love that sort of game, worth looking at. Then we have Vaccine. This is similar to sort of games like Emotion that they've already covered, and you know, it's sort of essentially it's like Battlezone really, but had nice ray trace graphics and a still sort of like just an interesting, fun game. But yeah, I wouldn't be on my list, but here it is. Likewise, Interphase at number 38, and this is interesting one. It's sort of like, you know, sort of cyberpunk inside a computer, and you know, I don't know, it's an interesting one really. Just spend absolute weeks on it and make your way through really. But the reason that they really put it here is because this was given free on Amiga Format issue 18, so they were trying to drum up sales really, because you could get the game for $3.95. I personally wouldn't put it on the list. I doubt they would have in reflection. Then we come to number 40, and this is cute. This is a Car Vup, and it's a cutie car really. It's oozing with character, and it is, you know, it's addictive and fun. Probably wouldn't make my list, but yeah, undeniably this is really, really special. Okay, let's go on to number 39, and they've chosen Castle Master. That's an interesting one, and this is essentially if ever you played 3D Construction Kit, which was sort of making these sort of games, Incentive Software did a whole series of these sort of games. They were better beloved on the 8-bits, really more impressive, but Castle Master was one of the best. And yeah, it's just, you know, the fantasy scenario. It gave that sort of like VR feeling of wandering around this world, and, you know, with their Freescape system. And yes, that's really, it was less about the gameplay, more about exploring the world. Okay, then we come to 41, and we have Super Hang-On. This was the reason I bought an Amiga. I saw this when it first got released at a friend's house, and I just couldn't believe how close it was to the arcades. And as it was so difficult for me to get to the arcades, to see such a close game, and it was interesting being able to use the mouse for analog controls. Wonderful port. Of course, the Yu Suzuki Classic brought to the home, and absolutely fantastic. Then we have Pro Tennis Tour 2. yeah, this is a great tennis game. Probably is one of the best tennis games on the Amiga. Really playable. They mention a few oversights that the girly tennis player has been called Thomas and things like that. But undeniably, this is a really playable tennis game. Probably the best on the Amiga. I still agree. Then number 43, we have Star Glider 2. This is done by Rainbird and is another really, really impressive sort of 3D space shooter game. Obviously, it stood out more on the 8-bits, but yeah, I mean, I can see why it's here. It sort of took Star Wars arcade, but ran with it and gives you a far more excitement and fun. So yeah, nice to see here. Then number 44, and this is a weird one that they've put this in. And it's the Chinese game Mahjong, essentially. Shanghai is its title, and you basically just get the tiles and make them disappear in the stack. It is an engaging game, but why it's in the top sort of like 100 fries my brain. Particularly the fact that at number 45, they've chosen Lotus Spree Turbo Challenge. This should be much higher up the list. It was great in that you could play 2-player. It was split screen. Of course, awesome racing game. And in many ways, I prefer this over the second game purely because it's more about racing the championship rather than just checkpoints. Just felt there was more progression to the game. But of course, I did love the fact that you went full screen. So I totally get why they chose it. And of course, the other sequels haven't come out at this point. Then at number 46, we have Operation Stealth, of course, done by Delphine. We'd cover this in the James Bond because essentially it is the 007 license without the license. In fact, in the US, as we mentioned, they did get the license. So it is a James Bond game, really. And yeah, I mean, it's an awesome idea to do a James Bond adventure game. A lot of the puzzles just very mundane. It's things like getting a carnation flower to then meet up because you got to wear the carnation flower. The silly ones. I mean, I wish they thought of better puzzles and a bit more engaging with the story in that way. But yeah, undeniable. It's fun. Then at number 47, we have World Class Leaderboard. Now, this is before PGA Golf had come onto the scene and sort of like took things forward. But yeah, I mean, it's a golf game, what do you say? It hasn't really aged compared to some of the others, and it was really old when they put it on the list here. But yeah, it's a game that's less relevant today. Then at number 48, we have Arkanoid 2, The Revenge of Doe. I'm surprised that this is here. I think Arkanoid 1 is far more superior on the Amiga. But they had put this here. Of course, it's based on the sequel. It is nice using the mouse, but I don't find it as playable as the original. So surprised to see it here, but here it is. And 49, this is one that I absolutely love, which is Battle Squadron. This is a wonderful vertical shooter, and it's got gorgeous graphics. They love the touch of 3D-ness to it, as they said, and just really, really good. But they're trying to be a bit like huffy about action games. And, you know, computer games are more than just shooters. That's the way that they were trying to be, I guess, standing out. And that's why you get games like the next one at number 50. So we're already halfway through. And it is Tower of Babel. Yeah, this is 3D view and, you know, sort of, I don't know. I mean, again, I think they chose this because I think it came free on one of the magazines at some point, but, you know, on Amiga Format. But, yeah, you control spider droids and no, I just don't know why it's here. Weird choices. Okay, let's go on to number 51. This one I definitely recommend that appeared, and that was Wings. This is set in World War One, but of course had the cinemaware treatment, and you sort of like follow the story of a pilot. It's essentially, like all their Cinemaware games, a series of mini games really, but they're really good mini games, mixing in 3D and 2D biplane sequences. Yes, it has an awful lot of disc swapping, thankfully something with WHD load you don't have to worry about these days, but yeah, this is a wonderful game really. And then moving on to number 52, and we have another Bitmap Brother classic with Cadaver. This is an isometric, beautiful graphical adventure game, and yeah, just good sort of like puzzles, great interface, and yeah, just it brought to memories of and to mind games on the Spectrum with the isometric viewpoint. I love this love letter to those sort of games, and Cadaver is one that I really enjoy going back to. Okay, number 53, surprised it's so low here, but I guess it was quite old at this point, and it is of course Bubble Bubble, and number 53, and this was the arcade classic. Just really good. You go around as two dinosaur bubble blowing creatures and pop as much as you can. Then we go to number 54, and they've chosen Leisure Suit Larry 3. This is, it's quite an expensive game at £34.95, but I understand, Leisure Suit Larry 3, the passionate Patty in pursuing of pulsating pectorals, says it all. It does mix in sort of like where you play Larry or passionate Patty, and there's really good puzzles here. Really sort of like enjoying. I do enjoy playing the Leisure Suit Larry game. So difficult to go back to with some of the annoyances of the Sierra games where it's like insta-death and things like that. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of fun. I'd probably play it on the PC these days though. Then at number 55, they've chosen Archipelagus, and this was a game because it was a free on cover disc really, but on Amiga Power, but it sort of mixes in Sentinel and Resolution 101, they say, and it's a really good puzzle game really, just a bit weird. It's ultimately though, it's quite simple arcade game. You're just sort of shooting, working your way through. It just scares a lot of people off because of its visual style, and it feels like a different game than it should be. Then you have Helter Skelter by Audiogenic. This mixes in, according to them, Bomb Jack, Emotion and Breakout. It has some cute graphics, and yeah, I mean, I don't know why it's here, quite frankly. I mean, often I feel some of these games they put on the list in the hope that it was going to be a cover disc. But yeah, I don't know why it's here, to be honest. Then at number 57, they've chosen Bomboozle, another Anthony Crowther game. They've obviously chosen it because it appeared on the cover disc of issue 1, the next issue. And, it's basically a puzzle game where you have to like sort of diffuse all the bombs in the correct way, making your way through. It plays easier in the overhead, but I do love the isometric views. At least you got the choice between the two. It is a great fun game, probably not one that deserves on the list, but of course they had to big up the games that they'd got free or putting on cover discs. Then we have number 58, we have Battle Command. This is essentially the sequel to Carrier Command and expands the complexity and ambition. This time you have sort of like more vehicles and amphibious bits, and yeah, if you love the first one, you'll probably enjoy. They say it's not as good as the first one, which I sort of get. Then we have Killing Game Show at 59. I love this game. This was, of course, done by Raising Hell, who, of course, went on to become Bizarre Creation. And they changed the name because when they did the home port of this, Sega didn't really like having hell in the title, so that's why they became Bizarre Creation. But yeah, it's a in a game show, guys, you're in a sort of Ed 209 robot, and you've got to sort of like shoot your way up as there's eternally rising water. So basically, Rainbow Islands meets a shoot 'em up, really. And yeah, it's had great music and great visuals. I still love the reflection in the water. Very, very cool. Tough game though. Then we have at number 60. Yeah, I mean, we probably would put it higher up the list when we did our top 50, but IK Plus is awesome. It's is a beat 'em up, probably more impressive on the 8 bits, but the 16 bits was sublime, really. You have, I guess the big thing about it is it's always 3 players on the fighting, even if 2 of them controlled by the computer if you're playing single player, and it just gives that sort of like continual madness. There's loads of nice little secrets, there's keyboard shortcuts to make the trousers fall down, and typical of, you know, these sort of games, you can see lots of little hidden secrets and things of Archer McLean that he loves putting in these games. So yeah, a definite classic and one that I adore. Okay, at number 61 we have Warhead. Yeah, I mean, I had to go back to this one. I didn't really remember it. And you know, they say it's an atmospheric 3D space game using some freaky autopilot slashings of green HUD systems and a weird fisheye lens view of the universe. It draws you into a demanding but very slickly presented game that will have you swearing with frustration for the first few hours. But they say stick with it, however, and the reward will become clear. A wealth of weaponry to explore and progressively involving missions. If you loved Elite, but you could have done without the boring trading bits, and have done without and have a thing for films like Alien movies, Warhead will delight and bewilder you. It's definitely one I want to go back to and play properly because, yeah, it sounds quite an interesting concept. Okay, at number 62 is yet another flight sim, and they've chosen FA-18 Interceptor. I find it difficult going back to these sort of like flight sims. I always struggled with them as a kid, apart from a couple of them, and they hadn't been released yet, the couple of them that I got more into. Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to play because of their slow sort of frame rate, but yeah, I knew particular dads of friends that, you know, they lapped up every flight sim. So I think if you love those sort of games, there's a lot to love here. Then at number 63, we have Future Wars. So this is kind of like Operation Stealth, done by the same team, but it's much more sort of like an interesting futuristic war storyline. And yeah, I mean, it's good. I mean, I do think Operation Stealth is probably the better of the 2 games, but undeniably Future Wars is another great point-and-click adventure. Then number 64, this is an interesting one, Night Shift. This is a sort of like puzzle platform game. You basically got to keep the machinery going. Of course, because it's Lucasfilm, it's kind of cool that the machine is churning out little Star Wars dolls and things like that. Takes ideas of the specky game Worst Things Happen at Sea and sort of runs with it, really. Yeah, I mean, if you love that game on the Spectrum or such games, yeah, I can there's a lot of fun to have here. Then at number 65 we have Silkworm. This is another arcade conversion, a great horizontal shoot 'em up. Plays brilliantly on the Amiga. I actually prefer the Amiga version in many ways over the arcade. Keeps the adrenaline going. Of course, no one ever wants to play the Jeep, but yeah, it's still a lawful lot of fun, really. And then you come to the budget label for Mirror Image. Really good value, $9.99, and they talk about 4 games. I mean, the first one, of course, is Speedball, the first Speedball game, an amazing Bitmap Brother early game. Whilst I prefer the sequel, this one is so iconic and so good in its own way. Then you have Defender of the Crown. This is such an iconic and important game on the Amiga, one of the very early ones that showed what the Amiga was capable of. and such beautiful graphics even today. Likewise, another Cinemaware classic with a Rocket Ranger. This has really good mini games in it, and is based on the comic books. Of course, it was turned into a film as well. So this is really, really good. And then Strike Force Harrier is the fourth one. Another interesting sort of like flight sim, if you like those kind of things. So yeah, overall, really, really good value. Then you come to their middle thing, which shows you the whole top 100 as it worked through. So no spoilers there, but there was a nice visual guide, I guess, in the middle of the free book. Then they give a little advert of 4D sports boxing. Yeah, it wasn't very... Well, it had its elements, I guess. I did play it, but yeah, it was just slow more than anything. Then at number 66, we have the massively ambitious Midwinter. Of course, done by Mike Singleton, who had done all those classics on the Spectrum. And yeah, this is sort of like working away of sort of like a snowy world. Again, it was really impressive, the sort of like the 3D go anywhere landscape. These sort of games I used to adore, in that you really felt you were exploring new worlds. Difficult to go back to now, but yes, it is truly ambitious, truly wonderful, and it's I totally understand why it's here. Then at number 67, we have another arcade port of Pac-Mania. This is actually a great home version of it. You know, it's Pac-Man in 3D. Obviously, I love the arcade version, but in some ways it's nice playing the Amiga port because they open up the visuals to not be the vertical screen, so it takes up the horizontal, so you can see a little bit further to the left and right. And yeah, it just plays really, really well. Then at number 68 is Kid Gloves. Now, of course, this was what they gave on their second game, so that's probably why it's here, really. But I do actually genuinely love Kid Gloves as a game. I mean, it wouldn't be far off my top 100, if I'm honest. It was just a real throwback to the 8-bit platformer games, but taking all the colour palette of the Amiga and running with it. I mean, it's one of the brightest, biggest use of colours on the Amiga. But it's a fun, old-school platformer with just overzealous use of sound effects everywhere. And yeah, just a lot of fun. One that I like going back to. Then we have 69, and this is Projectile. Sort of like air hockey meets table football. I don't know. I mean, I'm surprised it's here, but that's one that they have also suggested. One that is, I'm glad is here. I know it's here because of, it was another free giveaway on Amiga Format magazine, but Balance of Power 1990 is a truly epic game. I wish there was sort of like extensions of this idea. You basically control as US president, and you have to stop nuclear war, and you do it through social controlling the world, you know, giving money to certain countries to help their charity programs. A lot could be learned in the current American presidency as they've pulled all of that away. But yeah, no, it's a fascinating game. I absolutely adored it. I used to play this where we'd take a copy of the game and look on Amiga Format, and we would share the disc between me and my friends, and we would do the moves, save it, and then send it back and play it that way. Yeah, just a lot of fun. Okay, then we have number 71, and we have Rick Dangerous. The first game done by Simon Phipps, and you know, this was really, really impressive in 1989. You play as Rick Dangerous and you're basically Indiana Jones. There's lots of insta deaths, but it's part of its charm. It's one that you sort of like learn the levels as you progress, and therefore get a little bit further each time. Yeah, love it. Love the game. Okay, then we come to 72, and no, I'm glad to see this here because it's one of the LucasArts film sort of adventure games that doesn't get talked about, and it's Loom. It's another point and click, interesting ideas, uses Steven Spielberg ideas for storyline and has this sort of like musical elements and things like that. It is really, really good. Gets forgotten about because, of course, LucasArts had went on to do so many other great adventure games, so this tends to go to the bottom of the list. But of course, at this time, there wasn't many adventure games. They hadn't really, this is before Secret Monkey Island, so they hadn't really sort of like cemented themselves yet. Then we have at number 73, and we have Rocket Ranger. This is another typical Cinemaware game where you play Rocket Man, and it's set in like the 50s or World War II, I think. And you're World War II, and you're up against the Nazis to plan to wipe out the USA. Of course, there was the film of the time. I think this isn't based on the film, but the comic book or whatever it was based on. But yeah, really fun sort of like mini games and gorgeous graphics, of course. And it was quite an enjoyable game. And actually, they made a point of making it quite good with minimizing the disc swapping. Of course, that doesn't matter in today's world, but it was a big deal for myself back in the day. I had a lot of time with this, fun time with this one. Then we get to number 74, and we have another arcade home port, and it is Saint Dragon. This is an awesome horizontal scrolling shoot 'em up, but it's really, really good. Sort of like you play sort of like a metallic dragon. And one of the cool things is you can use your tail, which is indestructible, to sort of, if you turn in the right way, to protect your head. So there's a lot of nuance to the game. I do think the later levels become weaker, same in the arcade, to be honest, but those opening levels make this a real classic. Then we have a number 75, and of course they've had to choose Elite. Obviously it was more groundbreaking on the 8-bits when it first came out, but the Amiga port is probably one of the best ports to play. Has the coloured in graphics and the same great trading gameplay. Yeah, I mean, Elite was stunning, really. It was an entire galaxy to explore of hundreds of thousands of planets and solar systems. Truly mind-blowing. I just wish I had the time to play these sort of games today. Then they give an advert to the Power, which of course appeared on the top 100, and nice to see there. And then they advertised Skulls and Crossbones, another home port of the games. Not as good this time, but yeah, it's interesting to sort of see here. I think it does get reviewed later on in subsequent issues. But anyway, on to number 76, and of course they've chosen Quartz. This is sort of like parallax scrolling of tartan backdrops. May be many people's ideas of what you see after one crate too many on a Friday night. But to single-minded Amiga Zap fans, it means one thing. Paul Shirley's dazzling shoot-'em-up Quartz, it's the one that plays like a dream and looks like one of the Happy Monday's nightmares. Not a game if you feel you've got that morning after feeling, but for sheer adrenaline pumping genocidal mayhem, it is nigh unbeatable. Okay, I don't know why that's here, if honest, but again, I do suspect they were planning to come out with more of these games on the opening cover disc, but they were sort of encouraged by other publishers to not do so. Very low on the list, I think, is Flood at number 77, and this, of course, was a lovely game. It did make our top 50. It's done by Quiffy, and it's bizarre because it's got cute, wonderful graphics as you play like a swamp womble and picking up rubbish. But what's great as well is it's got all these mad over-the-top weaponry. It's not surprising because the guy who made this went on to make Syndicate. Yeah, I think it's a lot of fun and interesting platformer, so it's nice to see it here. Okay, then we have Buggy Boy. Buggy Boy is one that I absolutely adore. It's great to see it here, given that it was quite old, when this list was compiled. And it's another arcade home port, but I actually prefer this version over the arcade version in many ways, partly because the other cars on the road aren't there. So it all becomes about the racing. There's a annoying random element with the arcade version with the other cars. Whether this is just great. I mean, it's all about collecting the flags. You can play it in two ways. One, to try and complete it. But it's also about the score. If you get the flags in the right way, you'll get bonuses. If you go through all the gates, you'll get extra points. And there's hidden footballs that you can discover. So all of it is really good if you're after score junkie nature. Then we come to 79 and Zany Golf. I adore this. It's an isometric sort of crazy golf game and lovely levels. Plays fantastically well. Yeah, I've got a real soft spot for Zany Golf, so it's lovely to see here. Then at number 80, we have Pipe Mania. This is a puzzle game. You basically have to switch things around to make the water, the flues, sort of make their way through to the other end without reaching end. I get stressed with these sort of games. It's a bit like Locomotion and things like that. But clearly they liked it, and it's at number 80. Then at number 81, we have Total Eclipse, another sort of game like Castle Master and Driller and those sort of things. This has an Egyptian theme, and it's another good Freescape 3D game. I did enjoy them, probably more on the Spectrum. They were more amazing and impressive somehow on the Spectrum. But, if you wanted to go back to it, probably the Amiga versions are the ones to play. Then we're on to number 82, and they've chosen Dragon Breed. This is another arcade conversion, and you're riding on a dragon this time and shooting everything. It is a good home port. It looks great on the Amiga as well. Probably wouldn't make my list, but this time I can see why they chose it. One that I am loving to see here is the original James Pond game. This is, of course, before RoboCod, the sequel, had come out and impressed everybody. But at number 83, James Pond was a great spin-off James Bond parody, really. You're doing all these eco-friendly missions, saving the water and things, but of course he's dressed up in his little tux, and yeah, it's a lot of fun, really. Then we have Venus the Flytrap. This is interesting, partly because they were so negative about this game in subsequent lists, but somehow it made number 84. Here, I guess you've got a collection of people, you're always going to get differing views. I actually quite like Venus the Flytrap. It's quite a bright coloured platform shooter, more on the shooter part, but yeah, I think it's a lot of fun. Then at number 85, they've chosen Microsoft's Tetris, and of course Tetris needs no introduction. It was a huge deal. Obviously it made a real wave for itself on the Game Boy and all the home ports, but this is a pretty good version, really. I mean, you could argue that there's a lot of unofficial PD ones like Super Twintris that came out later and things that, and even at this time, I think Tetris Pro and things were out. But yeah, it's a great one. Probably one I wouldn't pay full price for outside of the Game Boy version. Then we have TV Sports Football at 86. I've never really got on with American football, but yeah, I mean, until games like, John Madden and things that came out later, this probably was the best one. Amazing presentation, and if you like those sort of games, pretty good. Now we're on to 87 and Distant Armies, and on the face of it is chess game, but this offers something different by choosing different versions of chess, and it gives you a sort of history of the game, tracing its origins through the Indian game of Chaturanga right the way through to the version we use today. So it's quite interesting in that regard. If you're a lover of chess, this is an interesting way to see the evolution. And I know some of our listeners do love their chess games. Now, number 88, I think it's sacrilege. This is so low. But Turrican at number 88 is awesome. It's a brilliant run and gun shooter. And it also has sort of like horizontal scrolling shooting later in the game. Love the music, of course, by Chris Hulsbeck. And yeah, I'm surprised to see it so low, to be honest. Okay, at number 89, we have Treasure Trap by Electronic Zoo. This is an isometric 3D puzzle game that was 10 a penny on the 8-bit machines, but never really made it across to the Amiga. But this is, as they say, is an underwater problem to fathom. Sorry, they say. And a liberal sprinkling of electric eels, crabs and stingrays to wade through. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one. It wouldn't make my list, but that's what I like, actually, is to see some of these obscure games that perhaps have been forgotten in time. Now, one that hasn't been forgotten in time is at number 90, they have the Batman, the movie pack. And yeah, you know, Ocean really knocked it out the park with this. It was a huge film, and this was a great license. Particularly memorable was the Batmobile sections, and the Batwing sections, sort of like taking the elements of driving and flying in the 3D realm. But, you know, the platform sections are pretty solid as well. This really was, the Batman movie pack was probably when the Amiga truly jumped to the stratosphere. You know, it was such a compelling looking game and such a big movie that it really meant, particularly in the UK and Europe, that so many people bought the Batman movie pack. Yeah, no, really, really good. Okay, we're on 91 already, we're nearly there. And they've chosen another Simon Phipps game with Switchblade. Already this was quite an old game, but it was a nice sort of like, you know, flip, old school platformer, lots of exploratory. I do like Switchblade. I find it a little bit difficult, the sort of like the having to hold down the fire button to power up your punch, which you do need to do, is a little bit annoying for the nature of the game, but and the levels are a little bit samey would be my thing. But yeah, I can see why there's so much love for this, and if you love your Rick Dangerous, you'll love Switchblade as well, although they are totally different games. Then we get to 92 and we have Supercars, overhead racing game with homing missiles and things like that. But it also has sort of like sections where you have to like pass a driving test and a few things. Great graphics, interesting gameplay. One that I'm not as big a fan of as many people, but yeah, I mean, it's undeniably a polished overhead racer. Then number 93, we have Their Finest Hour, another flight sim. And this gives you sort of following World War II. One of the great things is you get to fly pretty much every plane that was around at the time, so there's lots of choice, and you know, that's quite amazing in itself, really. I guess I struggle a little bit with the Finest Hours, but I do think it's one of the better LucasArts flight sim games. Yet another flight sim. They really do love their flight sims with MiG-29. Yes, you get to play the Soviet top fighter, the MiG-29 at this time. And yeah, it's just another flight sim really flying around. Probably more interesting is 95, Monty Python's Flying Circus. Now, a lot of people who didn't have the Amiga probably didn't know that there was a Monty Python game that came out. And this is just a pretty cookie-cut platformer, really. But it is done by Simon Phipps, so it has amazing graphics, and it does capture. There's so many in-jokes to the TV show, from Spam to Dead Parrots. It's got it all, really. For that, it's probably worth it. I just wish the gameplay was a bit better in many ways, and the sort of like the shooting elements. Okay, number 96 is Golden Axe. Yes, I mean, this is a really good home port of the arcade Sega classic. Yeah, it's just, I mean, I loved Golden Axe. Of course, it was a lot better, the home port on the Mega Drive when that came, but up until that point, this was the best way to play Golden Axe in the home. Yeah, really good. And then we're on 97, Ghouls and Ghosts. This is another home port of the arcade classic. It's pretty good. I'm not surprised to see it on the list, but it's a pretty solid home port, really. And then at 98, we have Red Storm Rising. This is an interesting one. Imagine a simulation which places you in command of a 7,000-ton American nuclear submarine. Now imagine Cold War had never thawed but escalated to the point where both sides play hunt and kill games in the world arena of the sea. So begins Red Storm Rising, based on Tom Clancy's best-selling novel. Surprisingly, despite the melodramatic premise of the game, the actual approach is highly a technical one. Forget fancy moving graphics. The entire thing is played using maps, charts and keyboard controls, with it never really playing or looking like a state-of-the-art 16-bit sim. The whole thing is frighteningly realistic exercise in naval cat and mouse. A deeper simulation you're unlikely to find. Then we have at 99 Zybots. This is another one based on the arcade Atari classic, and it's sort of a 3D Gauntlet, really, is what it was. It was going to be the Gauntlet sequel, but obviously a lot less enemies on the screen, but a really compelling game, and it's a great home port as you play Major Rock Hardy and Captain Ace Gun. Great two-player game as well. And then that brings us up to our number 100 and their top 100 list, and they've chosen, bizarrely, Grand Monster Slam. And I'm just going to read out what they said. Originality is never a problem with sports games. After all, what sort of thing would you expect to go on the Grand Monster Slam, the biggest sports festival in Monsterland? Where would you expect to find elves, goblins and trolls and even dragons battling it out in a dignified manner? And where else would you expect to play a game which is almost but not completely totally unlike tennis? Time has eroded none of the addictive qualities, although it does look a bit dated. It may be a bit too bizarre for its own good, but Grand Monster Slam offers a good few hours of alternative sporting action, with a couple of sub-games thrown in for good measure. Very strange choice there, but that was their top 100. Then they do an advert on Leisure Genius, so Scrabble Deluxe, Risk, Monopoly Deluxe, Diplomacy and Cluedo all included here, and just show those games quickly here. And yeah, I mean, I did enjoy these sort of like these board game in the home. Then they talk about the review of Bomboozle, which is of course they're going to give away in the next issue, and it's a nice sort of like idea of how to play it and what's involved. Then they give a nice interview with Anthony Crowther and David Bishop, and David Bishop sort of goes through sort of like, you know, what they're doing now and how they're working on Captive and you know, sequels and Captain Planet and things like that. But yeah, interesting one. And then it comes to what this is like a credo of Amiga Power, what they are ensuring to do. So they say that their magazine will be full colour. There will never ever be black and white pages at all. They promise that Amiga Power will have more pages dedicated to game reviews than any other mag. They promise that Amiga Power will only review finished games. They promise that Amiga Power will Amiga Power will be ambitious. They say it's a difficult thing to define, but they, beyond devoting 3 or 4, 5 pages even to a single review to do what they feel is needed. And then they say Amiga Power will be different, and saying that they would thought long and hard about game magazines, and they decided that they needed to redefine it, and they wanted to make it innovative. They really gave it a voice. I mean, for me though, Amiga Power just carried on what they already were doing with Your Sinclair. And then finally, their final claim is Amiga Power will carry a free disc on the cover every month. Now, they didn't do this. This was partly because there was a lot of backlash. So you've got to remember, a lot of the experts of the day, and probably were right, that the cover disc situation on the Spectrum and C64, particularly on the Spectrum, well, no, really on all the home ports, or all the home systems, got out of control. It got to the point where they were giving 7 free games on a cover tape. So, naturally, why would anybody buy the latest games? Because you could just, for £3, particularly like me who hadn't discovered them firsthand, that was a way of doing it. But yeah, that's one of the things that they were planning. And you can see the fact they were saying they were planning to take them from the all-time top 100 probably explains why there was a lot of strange choices here. But there was a lot of backlash, and there was the agreement was reissued to not do that. So they didn't do. And then we finally come to the last page, which is Navy SEALs. This is advertising their new game, of course, based on the movie, which is terrible, actually. I watched it recently. But the game isn't that bad, really. I quite enjoyed it. It's a typical Ocean game, really, but a lot of fun. So there you go, really. That's the top 100 and the issue 0 of the Amiga Power magazine, deep diving through. Hopefully, like me, it's been fascinating looking at all these interesting games and getting a sense of a place and time of the Amiga system. So look out. So hopefully, if people enjoy this, I will do other issues and work my way through my favourite gaming magazine, looking in depth. So until next time, keep it retro.